Now, Tom Brake, the Liberal Democrat MP for Carshalton and Wallington and co-chair of the Parliamentary Home Affairs Committee, said sanity and justice have been restored to British life. Control orders are gone. 28 days detention without charge is gone. Indiscriminate stop and search is gone. And the abuse of anti-terror powers by councils to pursue petty offences is over. Well, if you put it like that, it definitely sounds that way, but I wonder if that's the whole story. Tom Brake joins me now, and I'm very glad to say, Tom, thanks for joining the show.
That's all right, George. I'm glad you liked the press release.
It's a very good quotation. I'm not sure, though, that it's the whole truth, but we'll come to that. But let me invite you to defend this statement first off, can I?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the coalition government set out in its programme that it would undertake a review of counter-terrorism legislation. My party, the Liberal Democrats, we were committed to getting rid of control orders, and we are abolishing control orders.
Well, up to a point, you're certainly calling them something different, but people can still, in Britain, without trial, without charge, without even knowing why, can be subject to a very considerable range of restrictions.
Well, it's true that there are a very limited number of people who are currently detained now. It's 9 people.
Doesn't matter how many it is, Tom, does it?
Subject to control orders.
You're a Liberal, Tom. It doesn't matter how
indeed,
many.
That's true. But under our proposals, there is a time limit. I think one of the most draconian things about the current control orders is that they are indefinite, that people can be detained under house arrest indefinitely without an opportunity to defend themselves. Under our proposals, there will be a maximum 2-year period during which the police will have to seek evidence with a view to prosecution. And that is very different to the current arrangements. And the other thing that's very different is, for instance, that people will not be forced to relocate at the moment. And I met someone a couple of weeks ago who'd been subject to a control order. The police arrived at his house and said, you are now going to move to somewhere you've never lived in before, and we now have to do that immediately. And that will not happen.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not being churlish. I think you have achieved something here. But it's wrong to talk it up as if it's a return to the Britain we used to have. I mean, for example, the 28 days is gone. As I understand it, it's now
down to 14.
It's now 14.
Yeah.
But why is it 14? Why do we treat people accused of these offences differently from how we treat people accused of other defences? I mean, people will have followed the case of the murder of Joanna Yates recently, where the police had to go to court to get permission to continue to question someone after 2 days, I think. I mean, there's a big gap between 2 days and 14 days.
Yes, it is true that terror suspects are treated differently, and they can be detained pre-charge, in other words, before the police charge them with any particular offence, for up to 14 days. Now, I mean, certainly I think that could be reduced. Now, what I hope will happen is that as we introduce other measures, such as using intercept evidence, as we use, for instance, post-charge questioning, and as we use more surveillance on people who are suspects, that actually we can bring that down. But I think 14 days is a very good starting point. And it's a huge improvement on 28 days. And, of course, as you all know, George, the Labour Party and Tony Blair, he was actually talking about increasing it to 90 days without any justification at all.
Oh, you don't need to remind me, Tom, of that. Now, the indiscriminate stop and search is gone. That's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it?
Well, at the moment, the police have the powers to, without suspicion, to stop vehicles. That is going to change. What they'll have to do now is that they will be allowed to stop and search vehicles, but only if they can reasonably or have reasonable suspicion that there might be an imminent act of terrorism about to take place in a particular location. I think we've got the Olympics in mind there, and I think that is much more restricted than the present powers, which they can use without any they don't even have to have suspicion that someone is about to commit an offence.
Sure, but you said it's gone. It's not gone.
Well, I mean, it's being the stop and search without suspicion, that is going, and it is being replaced with the requirement for the police to have real, sort of reasonable suspicion that something is about to happen imminently at a particular location. They'll have to specify where that is, and those powers will be time limited.
So, is the weather getting fairer in Britain for liberty?
Well, I can do no better than to quote Ken MacDonald, who has very publicly stated his opposition, for instance, to control orders, and who was asked by the government to review the whole of this process. And he is on record as saying that these measures, so reducing 28 days pre-charge detention down to 14, abolishing control orders, that represents an unmistakable rebalancing of public policy in favour of liberty. That's the view of Ken MacDonald, the independent overseer of this whole process.
Well, good enough for him, good enough for me. Tom Brake, thanks very much indeed for joining us, the Lib Dem MP, co-chair of the Parliamentary Home Affairs Committee. He's happy, as Larry, about the state of liberty in Britain today. I wonder if you are.